Now, 6 months probation at work is actually based on something called the Supply of Goods and Services Act, which states that you can return a product within 6 months of getting it.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is the third episode of the This Is Me series, and before we dive into our conversation for today, I'd like to ask you to kindly subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified of subsequent videos. And I have very exciting stuff planned, so please subscribe and support my channel. Thank you. So for today, we have a very lovely guest here with us. He's called Emmanuel Bakare, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Hannah, for the warm introduction. And please follow our channel. My name is Emmanuel Bakare. People call me Backman. I currently work at AWS as a systems engineer. My day-to-day life has spun around community events, leading startups. Some failed, some passed. I've worked at a company that got acquired. I've had a lot of experience in tech, and I primarily focus on DevOps. My day-to-day life is mostly around math. I do quite a lot of stuff for Project Fueler, and I also study law on the side. So that's me in general.
It's very great to have you here, Emmanuel. So now let's get to know you a little bit better. Can you tell us about your journey and how you got to work as a systems engineer, development engineer at AWS?
Okay, love the question, Anna. I started programming way back when I was in secondary school. My dad brought home a laptop, and at the time, there was Visual Basic. He was like, oh, he has this guy that we used to take laptops to fix stuff. And it was like, hey, if you have a laptop, you can learn programming. Bless his soul, else I wouldn't be here today. So I started with Small Basic back when I was in junior secondary school. Maybe that was maybe some 12, 13 years ago. So quite a while. And I continued with it, passed up until like my final year in secondary school. That was when I started getting into doing math with code. Didn't know about algorithms then, but things like writing Fibonacci and all those other stuff came in. I got into the university, quite okay, electrical engineering. During that time, I met up a couple folks who were also writing code, surprisingly. I ran a startup, quite surprisingly, in my first year. Crashed, ran to the ground, but we did host an event. It went like mainstream. We got investors back in the day, had like 500k naira in investments. Wow. That was the first time I was seeing big boy money, for actually running something.
Yeah.
I ran it with two friends back in school, Tife and Caleb. We went wide, but it didn't work out so well. So from there, we kind of pivoted. I continued writing code. I got a job, and then I started with GDG Unilag. I and two others ran the community right from the start, 2015. And that kind of spun up for, I think, almost 3 years before I left that and went to GDG Cloud Lagos.
Okay.
So that was more like the community experience. Post-graduation, most of that work experience and community experience that kind of helped out with visibility, I guess. And that ran off into meeting people. Some referred me for jobs, which I'm grateful to them to today. Companies like Deimos, where I ran it when I joined, and I really had a lot of experience there, leadership-wise, people-wise, technically-wise. From there, jumped off to another company called Replex. Replex was a company that did data disaggregation, Kubernetes God's governance. I was there for a year, 6 months. The company got acquired. Very good day by Cisco. That was a very lovely experience. One that I think I put on my resume a lot. And once that happened, I joined another company called AWS, and that's where we are today.
Okay, that's a very cool journey. And I like the fact that you mentioned, I mean, unlike other people like me who didn't get into tech very early in our journey, like you started quite early, and I think it helped you gain confidence to be able to even start like a startup in your freshman year. So can you tell us what the startup was about? And I don't think you mentioned your university as well, so you can check that in.
Oh, yes. I studied at I studied electrical engineering at University of Lagos. I got in as the first on the merit list, so it was a pretty grand entrance. Lots of visibility then with lecturers, professors. My time there, likewise with that, spun into meeting people. I met two folks, Tife and Caleb. So we ran a startup that could allow you mix songs. So you could have a playlist. We call it Co-Jam. Okay. So if you were in a party and you were playing his songs, right? You know, the DJ sometimes, like, he plays a lot of really bad tracks. No offense to DJs everywhere. But sometimes you're like, oh, well, why can't the people in the party mix the jams, you know? Hence the cool jam experience.
Yeah.
So we built like this slider experience on like a web UI where you could like scroll. We served it from a Raspberry Pi. Then we had no knowledge of networking. We had no knowledge of what do you call it, media streaming, compression, all those, you know, little things that make the experience better. It worked out well when we were testing it locally. When we ran our first beta, not so much. But the entire process of building something and having it launch and having it, you know, go somewhere, yeah, that was quite a thing.
That's great. That's great. How was it like working with other people? Because I think when we are at that stage, it's very difficult to get people who are like-minded to work on something with you and who are as passionate about working on that particular thing with you as well. So how did you find such people and how did you influence them to, you know, work on the project with you?
Yeah, so the first thing I learned during that experience was a lot of accountability. So most people think when you join a team, it's mostly like, oh, you're doing your part of the work, but usually that's, you know, what's expected. You have to go above and beyond. Running a startup means you are not just accountable to yourself, but you're accountable to the entire business because you literally run everything. And with 3 people, you know, the work kind of like gets overloaded. So the technical stuff, you have to think about how the user is going to use the experience. You know, you have to be very product focused, user oriented in the approach to things. And with the people side of things, that kind of blends in together. Because when you build the UI, you know, the graphics designer, Caleb at the time, will be like, yeah, this doesn't look like a good experience. You have to empathize on his part, understand where it's coming from. Different might be like, oh yeah, this is a different view. You know, mediating those interactions. I guess that's something that I learned from then, which was very helpful in my career.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's going to help you build your leadership skills as well and just managing and delegating, like a whole lot of things. I think it's good that you started this very early. So it means that when you got to final year, you had a full-blown company or something like that.
Oh, not at all. We did try another. Same team. We were like, oh, we're going to like, you know, streamline media payment services. Like Netflix, something like what do you call it? So there's this thing that people do where like they merge money together, like a multi-purpose cooperative. So we're like, oh, why don't we not have something like that for say payment sharing platforms like Netflix, or you're going to dinner and you wanted to split the bill amongst yourselves? Like, why isn't that a thing?
Yeah.
You know, like something like who owns the tab, you know, like why does one person pay and everybody now has to roundhouse?
Yeah.
You know, platforms to split that experience. We also did that again when we're in our 400 level. I quit my job, focused on that. It was quite an experience. Best 2 months of my life. We tried applying to YC. Like we built the entire thing, but usually then again you learn that, you know, the intricacies of markets, you know, and building your product is a lot different during that time. So yeah. That was another thing I learned.
You said you tried applying to YC, like Y Combinator?
Yeah, Y Combinator.
From Nigeria?
Yeah, from Nigeria.
And that is possible?
Yeah, it was very possible at the time. This was like, what, 2018, some 6 years ago.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, I think the notion most people have is they need to be in like Silicon Valley or like that particular location to be able to get into YC.
Oh, no. Like YC is a global village of startups, you know, from Nigeria to everywhere else. The company might be incorporated, dual incorporated, tri-incorporated in across different countries, but no discrimination.
So you just apply, you get in, and then you move if needed to that location, and then you just start the whole process.
No, you don't need to move. You could have your base in Nigeria. Like you could definitely move out of the country to say ease out logistic issues, or you are trying to scale the company's presence to different countries. You know, that might be a thing. It might be easier to operationalize those, say, from the US or the UK.
Okay.
And the founder might move there to, you know, sort out all the legal debacles with being present.
Okay.
But I think those.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've veered off a little bit from what you were talking about, but it was also like an interesting thing to discuss. Yeah. You mentioned you work as a systems development engineer at AWS. Can you tell us what a systems development engineer does in general?
Yes, a systems development engineer is similar to what Google could call an SRE.
Okay.
And what Meta would call production engineering. So it's basically another branch of DevOps. Popular to misconception, DevOps is not really a stack; it's more a culture, right, along the agile lines.
Yeah.
And what I do day to day at AWS was primarily networking. So that was the L3, L4, L7 layer. For those who might not know networking, I would not skim too much about that.
Yeah.
But just on that layer, we manage global workloads operationally. Quite a lot of experience with scale. Yeah.
Cool stuff. It sounds like a challenging role because that's how SRE roles are like, because you have to be on call almost every time and just support whatever is going on so that the system is reliable as the role defines. So can you tell us about some of the day-to-day challenges that you face in your role and how you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so for a large organization like AWS, you usually have things like coordination, teams across different time zones, right? On the technical aspects, you have processes that have become outdated, legacy stuff you have to work around, automation, writing code. With that comes the idea that, okay, there must be some API or some service agreement between two parties or multiple parties that, yeah, if we wanted to say build a cup, there's a specification for the cup, and I can put in parameters like, oh, is it red, is it blue, is it transparent, is it this height, that height? And sometimes that's not, provided, and the ownership model doesn't allow you change that. So, you have to follow up with that. So all those organizational processes, procedures, alongside the political aspects of that, you have to be able to be very people-minded in that approach. So yeah, to keep it brief, I'll just say those two: technical work, automation skill, and also the organizational aspects, coordination with teams across different time zones, and yeah, dealing with people.
Okay, that's good. But do you have any particular steps on how to actually do that, like deal with the people and be people-minded?
Yes, there's this book by Sarah Drasner, Engineering Management for the Rest of Us. It's a very particularly niche thing that maybe speaks to being a people manager. But in essence, we all kind of manage people in a little way, right?
Yeah.
In relationships, in personal friendships, and the book aligns it towards like, an engineering background. She's a lot of experience. So I would highly recommend that book for folks that want to learn about that. From my personal experience, it depends on the company. AWS has a more direct approach to approaching problems. And like the company I worked at, Replex, had a very more ownership model like way of doing it, meaning, yeah, I want you to help me with it, but I'm going to start off because it was a startup, and then you come in and join me.
Yeah.
So differing views. I can't really say there's an absolute way to fix
So
that.
it depends on the company culture as well.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
that's cool. Is there a specific stack for SRE or like being an SDE?
Yeah, usually it's like the programming languages are usually things like Python, Ruby, Golang, Rust. It really depends on what the company operates on, but generically it's one of those four: normal bash scripting, understanding of Linux, sometimes Linux systems, that's internals of Linux, like the kernel. And yeah, like those are just like the ground level stuff to get started.
Yeah, that's good. When you were introducing yourself you mentioned that you are pursuing a master's degree in law, right? Can you tell us the motivation for that?
I had a couple friends back in school that I used to meet with. I was in ISEC, and one of the models of ISEC back in Unilag was...
What's ISEC though?
Oh yes, oh yes. Thank you for that. So ISEC is an organization, a global organization that promotes leadership through exchange.
Okay.
So what that means is that you have a campus within your university, within your country, your state, right? And then you basically build and work on projects around the SDGs. That's the one from the UN. So you could pick, say, goal 5, goal 7, and then you focus on what kind of community initiatives would help with that. Along with that comes a very diverse background. Some folks might be working towards food and ending world hunger. The engineering side of it, how do we preserve tomatoes? That was the project we had during our time. The engineers would be like, yeah, we could probably find a way to make freezers more accessible, less energy consuming, for people who do not have the facilities, probably run it off, things like gas. There's a way to both use the gas to cool, also power the compressors. And then also the law aspects, how do you patent this if it becomes a big thing? In my case, engineering and law was the primary major contributions in the ISEC population that's in my campus Unilag. So I met a lot of folks who were in law. I got to meet them. We spoke about it and I enjoyed the experience and decided to pursue masters after.
Okay, that's a very interesting journey, and I think it's quite similar to Holt's Prize. I don't know if you've heard about it, because that one say you pick an SDG goal and then you develop an idea. But I think that's more towards like startups and stuff like that.
Yes. The Odd Prize also was present in Unilag. Generally, I think it was a state and then global thing. Yeah, they had a similar mindset, but ISEC was more like a community. I guess not more like a one-time event. So it's majorly ran throughout the year. They didn't really have like prizes or occupations, just mostly like, teams, and you've fitted into one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like combining your master's degree with your role at AWS can be very challenging. So like, how do you balance those two?
It is very challenging, I will say. I actually took a break, a short break during my studies to focus on AWS, primary employment. But the way I balanced it is by working part-time on the masters. You can actually switch to that. And with that comes the flexibility to better manage it. You can read once you're done with work, post 5 p.m., doing your lunch breaks, and the exams also that come with that. So it's been a great experience in learning to manage even more workloads.
Yeah. And are there cases or scenarios where you find yourself applying the concepts that you've learned in law in your AWS role?
At this time, not so much, but in personal life, yes. Like, there are so many weird facts I've discovered. Like, the weird thing is you can get sued for pledging to a charity and not actually doing it. I've learned about serious cases, that happen over the years, some very long, ancient, things that influence how we are today. Like now, 6 months probation at work is actually based on something called the Supply of Goods and Services Act, which states that you can return the product within 6 months of getting it, if that makes sense. And with that comes the fact that you as a person, you are a service to a company, and within 6 months, if they don't like you, they can choose to return you back.
Really?
Yeah. So it's not just like an arbitrary 6 months. It's actually based on an act in the UK, which Ireland borrows a lot of those legal concepts from, and the world in general also.
Okay.
Yeah. Somewhere like the US, for example, at will employment, different scenario you get. So things like that, it influences that model of seeing life.
Do you think you will pursue law like full time?
I spoke with a couple folks once I got here that actually did study law and pivoted. Some Irish, some people that came here to study likewise. It's a long career choice, one that spans 7 years, of investments, bachelor's, law school, and also the externships to gain experience. I don't really think that would be a career choice, but the future can always change.
Okay. But you went straight into masters. You didn't need like a bachelor's in law.
Yes. The school I'm studying with provides something called the career changers, where you can actually apply. With that, you write an essay, you do a technical assessment. At the time, I'd been taking MOOCs of EDX and Udacity, so I had like a good ground on some concepts in contract law, and that helped during the interviews and the essays that I wrote. Depiction of where I've used law in my previous role, Replex, during the acquisition. There were cases on determining whether certain licenses will be infringed. Things like that. You kind of apply that quite reasonably. And yeah, the tests. That was an experience, but I was really glad that I passed that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. But I was looking at your profile, and then I saw that you were also a community manager for GDG, like Google Developer Group in Lagos, Nigeria. Can you tell us about that role and how being a community lead influenced your career?
Yes, being the community manager in GDG was a very big experience for me. So at the time when it started, JDJ Unilag really wasn't an active. It was registered, but it really hadn't started. So me, Ikbaya, and Hope kind of like spun that experience. Like we really ran it all the way that even campuses outside Unilag were coming for our events. Like it grew really big. The prime experiences for me were one, people. Like I gained a lot of people skills there. Tons of leadership experience, operations, you know. When you're hosting events, you will figure like a ton of things can go wrong. And a ton of things and a lot of things there. Like the hall is too small. You didn't plan ahead, you know, the number of people that will be coming, you know, disseminating information appropriately, communicating change of plans, dealing with, you know, vendors that might, you know, change their minds 2 days to the event. They're like, oh, sorry, we can't deliver, find someone else. You know, that kind of critical crisis, high urgency thinking. I learned a lot there. And in terms of that people experience, it also then gained a lot of trust. And folks, you know, will be like, oh yeah, I know Emmanuel, he's technically sound, he does well in school. I feel he'll be a good fit for our team. I got referred for 2 roles, quite surprisingly, from just leading JDJ alone. Both Replex and Deimos. I did not apply. Like people were like, oh, this guy seems like he'll be a good choice. Yeah, we'd like him to join the team. And that's how I joined those places. So it's not just been like I learned a lot. It's also been that people have also helped me a lot too, just from that experience.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this again, and I won't get tired of saying it. Communities are great. Being part of Isaac Influencers Law journey, and now he's talking about how being part of GDG gave him access to various opportunities, and he didn't even have to apply for those opportunities. So be active in developer communities or like communities that you are interested in. It opens many doors for you. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for sharing that as well.
Oh, yeah, no problem, Hannah.
I've heard a lot about your career and a lot about your role in AWS. Can you tell us, or can you give an advice to the people, our viewers who are watching, on how they can also build their career in tech and maybe land a role as an SRE or SDE, depending on which company?
Yes, definitely. I did give like a similar talk back in Unilag just some weeks ago. I guess the prime notes for it were things like productize yourself. I'm a big fan of Naval. Even though a company is looking to hire you, they are really looking for someone that fits the model of the problems they want to solve. Usually internships and all these other things might have a very broad description, but as you move up the career ladder, it begins to shrink and they're looking for like specialties. So productizing yourself is like, you understand that, okay, you need to have that product market fit, right? Like for me, DevOps was like in my first year in school, like I was telling Tifa that, yeah, that's the person we ran Kojam with. That, I feel like this DevOps thing is really hard. And people might not really invest so much in it. So if I learn it and I become really good at it, I'll never be out of a job. And I've never been out of a job for the past 9, 10 years now. So things like that, you know, understanding the market, understanding your role, you're blending into that. The second thing would definitely be focusing on studies. As much as I joined, like, I had a very good entry into Unilag and I had a very good academic career-wise. The things I learned in school were very important, right? Things like managing deadlines, you have assignments, dealing with very tough supervisors, your teachers. Some of them are just, quite tough. They're like, oh, we're sorry, but like, you have to be on time to this class. If not, you're not entering. Those things actually occur in the work-life environment. So the entire point of studying is not really just to learn alone. It's also getting into the environment as you start off. And then the last advice I'll give is, as you said, join communities. For me, communities have influenced my life in ways I can't explain. Like, there are tons of people that I've met. Some become like really long life friends, some mentors. Some, like, we've learned from each other so much that, like, we speak on a regular basis, just from Twitter or LinkedIn, So, yeah, that's definitely another one.
I like your point on the value aspect, like making sure that you know the value that you are bringing into the market and also marketing that value to other people, because people will always pay for value, right? They won't pay for something that doesn't have any value. So know the value that you're putting out there and make sure you work every day to increase that value so that it's always valuable, because the world is dynamic and things are changing. So you might be of value now depending on what skills you have, but maybe later on
It's not gonna work.
those skills won't work for you, right? So keep learning and keep increasing your value.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes, no problem, Hannah.
Right. So AWS is a place that's known for constant innovation. So are there any exciting projects or products that are coming up that you think our viewers should be aware of?
Coming up, I cannot say, but presently, the ones that I've interacted with within CloudWatch that I love were things like prediction bands on metrics, So you no longer have a straight line, you have a band that fits up and bottom, It's really great for avoiding all those noisy alarms and things like metric insights, like and tons of others, Like it really depends on the scope, but those two I'd say were very, very exciting for me.
Yeah, because those are the things that you work with. Okay.
Yes,
That's
correct.
Right. I think it's been really great talking to you, and I know you personally, so I know you're a very nice guy, and you like bringing people together, and maybe you do a lot of other things outside of studying law and doing your daily job. But then, what are some of the things that you do outside of your work that helps you?
Yes. I'd actually make a quote from Naval. Naval has like this. I'm a big fan of Naval for context. Is he has this thing where it's like find a hobby that makes you money, a hobby that keeps you fit, and a hobby that makes you learn. Right? Like for me, a hobby that makes me learn, things like Project Euler. I follow a lot of people online that have a lot of technical blogs. Reading is an active pastime. Hobbies that keep you fit. Sadly, your mind-body connection, influences how you view things. Keeping fit really like pushes you out to do more. And for me, I had a small thing in boxing. I got really good at it. Used to train back in Lagos. I had a very good stint also here. But I've joined a couple clubs, gone on what they call county tours, boxing it out.
So you had official fights?
Yeah, no. I never got that far. The 9 to 5s were quite enduring, and for boxing, you run 10 kilometers or 5 kilometers, and you go spar. You have post-sparring activities, push-ups, all that. It was a bit too much, but definitely one that built endurance. You learn to take a punch, take a hit, get back up, push your body out.
Makes you resilient.
Yeah, very resilient. Like you always get back up. And then for the hobby that makes you money, I am yet to find that one, but it's definitely investing. I read this book, Intelligent Investor from Benjamin Graham. Follows up on a couple of things I learned from Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Like, you learn the subtleties of human behavior by just observing the stock market. Oh, everyone's like opening eyes up. All of a sudden, the skyrockets. Right. It's normal human behavior. That's actually how the stock market kind of drags along. But what you learn is that usually it's not the small pennies that fill the ocean. It's the large guys, the hedge funds.
Yeah.
So if you have a way to think ahead before they make those bets, like you do kind of make a lot from that.
Yeah.
And I've had very good experiences in that approach. So definitely investing. So yeah, those three from Naval and very positive ones.
Yeah. Throughout our conversations, you've talked about a lot of books. Are there some top 3 books or top 5 books that you think that every person should read?
Yes, there's The Anthropology of Economy by Stephen Goodman. It discusses the weird ways we think about money. A very good example I loved from the book was how people spending behavior gets more influenced when it's credit versus actual debit. Right? People tend to not conceptualize that the money they spend on credit must be paid back at that instant. Right? It's kind of like this deferred gratification model that we apply. That's why credit cards, you can get as many as you want, but getting a bank account is so difficult. You get. So, like, he really explains all those details. I would highly recommend that one. Another one that I would recommend is Thinking Fast and Slow. Really influences how you make decisions, right? Understanding the weird mistakes you can make, like, 5 cents, like you see something like 99.99, it's still 100, right? You don't really lose much if you go for something that is 100 and has a lot more value to offer. And then the third one is a technical book, Computer Networks by Andrew Tannenbaum. It's really in detail and it explains like all the hardware to software integrations. For me, I studied electrical engineering. I worked in a startup that did that grid systems early back. And, I had my share of, seeing signals, interpolation, correction, all those kind of things. And for me, that book brought back those memories.
Yeah.
So it's a big one for me.
Yeah. I'm just juicing you here, but one last question before you go. Can you tell us how a junior software engineer can go from being a junior to like a senior level software engineer?
Yes, perfect. I wrote an article a while back, something called Delivery Matters with more in brackets, like does delivery matter more, does it deliver less? Usually technical experience can be learned along the way, but delivery is what kind of makes the difference. Right? Like when you usually hear your teammates speak, it's not like you have opinions, right? And they usually give you the opportunity to express that. But you'd notice that the way they deliver that message, right after hearing you and presenting that again to the team, all of a sudden everyone is like, yes, you're on board. You get like you feel like, am I being overshadowed here? But really it's nothing like that. It's just the way you emphasize the message and communicated it and made the difference with the senior guy saying that. Some parts also influence and experience, to gain that trust. So delivery is the way to achieve that. Like we all know that there are people who are not as technically experienced that are in high positions. And it's not really by chance sometimes. It could be, but usually it's based on how they deliver, manage these expectations, communicate with stakeholders. It comes with a lot of experience, it comes with a lot of understanding company culture. It comes with a lot of understanding delivery model there, but working on your delivery is the fastest way to go.
So the main point is communicating your thoughts and like what you are working on, basically.
Yeah, I do say quite vaguely when I just say delivery. Yes, and it's mostly because like it's a very company-centric thing. It really depends, but generally, yes, communication, both written and oral, matters more, and also in terms of the way you deliver your work, right? The level of detail and attention, consistency, yeah.
But how is there like a guideline or an article or book that can help us?
There's like a couple ones, like the roadmap to say being a staff engineer or all those things, but generally, I'd say if you put in the years and you just consistently improve, we all get there. There's no cheat code. I'll be selling a Ponzi scheme if I do say there is.
Okay, that's good. Cool stuff. Thanks for sharing all those things. It's been really insightful just talking to you, and I wish we had more time to just talk about all the things that you have to share with us. And I know there's a lot more, but maybe we'll come back just to talk about all those things once more.
Yes,
thank you. And it's been a pleasure having you here on the This Is Me series.
Oh, yes.
Do you have any last words for our viewers?
The last thing that I have, I guess, to add is that delivery matters. Like it really does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Delivery matters. So as we end this, I will just reiterate that please subscribe to my channel. And if you like this content, if you like these videos, just subscribe and click on the notification bell. So we'll end here. Thank you for tuning in. And this has been my channel, Hannah Lomenyo, and This Is Me series signing off. Annyeong.